All right, so you want to speak English more fluently, huh? Well, you've sent us a ton of really cool stuff about that.
Yeah, lots of good stuff about training your brain, practicing like crazy, and even getting over being nervous about making mistakes.
That's right. It's like a whole roadmap to fluency, and we're going to dive deep into it today.
Yes, it's going to be fun. So we'll
Yeah.
pull out the best techniques, those hidden gems that can really help people get to that next level,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Our goal is to make those complicated ideas super clear and give you action steps you can use right now to start thinking and speaking in English more naturally, no matter what level you are right now.
I like that, no matter
Yeah.
what level you are right now.
Yeah. So let's get started with something that seems pretty basic, but it's actually super powerful, thinking in English.
Right.
So why is this so important for fluency?
We see your first language is like this deep groove in your brain.
Right.
It's like your default setting. So when you're trying to speak English, but your mind's still stuck in your native language, you're kind of translating everything in your head before you can even say it.
Oh, so it's like having an extra step in the process.
Exactly. And that extra step, it just slows you down. It makes your English sound, well, a little hesitant. And thinking directly in English kind of cuts out that middleman. You know, your thoughts flow right into words without that translation barrier.
So it's more like how a native speaker would think.
Exactly. They don't have to translate their heads. They just think and speak.
Okay. But the question is, how do we even start to make that shift? Like, our brains are so used to thinking in our native language. That seems like a huge challenge.
Well, it's not easy, for sure.
Right.
But the information you sent actually has some pretty cool techniques. And one of the simplest ones is self-talk.
Oh, like talking to yourself.
Yeah, basically. But in English. So as you go through your day, try to describe what you're doing or even just what you see around you in English. Simple stuff like, I'm making coffee, or look, a red car.
Oh, I see.
Little things like that can actually make a big difference.
Yeah.
Might feel a little weird at first, but it gets easier with practice.
So it's like creating an English-speaking environment inside your own head.
That's a great way to put it.
Are there other ways to train our brains to think in English?
Definitely. Another cool method they mention is labeling. It's kind of fun. So whenever you see something, like a chair or a book or a lamp, instead of just thinking the word in your native language, you actually say the English word in your head. It's like giving your brain a little vocabulary workout.
Oh, I like that. It's like those flashcards, but using real life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really good for building your vocabulary.
And remember, everything we are talking about today is based on a bunch of different sources about fluency that you sent us. And one of the things that they talk about is mentally practicing conversations. Yes.
Yes. Mental rehearsal. So picture yourself in a common situation. Maybe you're ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions.
Right.
And you run through that conversation in your head in English. It's like practicing in a safe space before you actually do it for real.
That's actually really clever, like a dress rehearsal for your brain.
Yes, it is like a dress rehearsal for your brain.
But here's the thing. All of this brain training, it sounds great in theory. But for someone who's used to thinking in their native language for years, it just seems really daunting.
Oh, it is.
It's like you're trying to change a deeply ingrained habit.
It really is.
So what do the sources say about this?
Well, they're realistic about it. They say, don't expect to wake up one morning thinking perfectly in English. You
All
know?
right.
It takes time.
Yeah.
Like weeks or even months of consistent effort. And they've really emphasized that word, consistency. It's more important to do a little bit every day, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes, than to try to cram it all in at once.
I see. So it's not about massive study sessions, but more like creating this daily habit of thinking in English.
Exactly. It's about making it part of your routine,
Yeah.
like brushing your teeth.
Got it. So we're working on getting our brains to think in English, but what about the actual speaking part? Like, what are some practical ways to improve our speaking skills?
Okay, well, there's no way around it. The key is to speak out loud,
Mm-hmm.
and ideally every single day.
Okay. That makes sense. But what kind of speaking practice are we talking about specifically?
Well, there are a few things you can do.
Okay.
One really simple but effective method is repetition. Just listen to English podcasts, movies, TV shows, anything you like, and repeat what you hear. Pay attention to the pronunciation, the rhythm, the intonation. Try to mimic the speaker as closely as you can.
So it's almost like you're shadowing them.
Yeah, exactly. Shadowing is another technique they mentioned. It's basically repeating right after the speaker, almost like you're their echo.
And then we've got the self-talk that we were talking about before, but this time we actually say it out loud.
Exactly. You're basically narrating your own life in English.
All right, so now let's talk about something that might be a little scary for some people. Recording yourself speaking. Is that really necessary?
I know it can be a little cringy to listen to your own voice, but trust me, it's one of the best ways to improve.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, when you hear yourself speaking, you can really pinpoint your weaknesses.
Hmm.
You know, like maybe you notice that you're mispronouncing certain words or that you keep using the same grammatical structure over and over again. Or maybe you realize that you speak too quickly or too quietly. And once you know what you need to work on, you can start practicing those specific things.
So it's all about self-awareness.
Exactly.
You mentioned something about mimicking native speakers earlier. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, it's more than just repeating words. It's about really listening to how native speakers use the language, like how they connect words, the rhythm, the intonation, all those subtle things that make English sound natural.
Mm.
And when you start to mimic those things, your own English will start to sound more fluent and less choppy.
So it's about picking up on the music of the language.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
A lot of English learners, myself included, get really hung up on grammar. We're always worried about making mistakes. And that can really hold us back from speaking fluently.
Oh, absolutely. But here's what the sources say about that. Perfect grammar is not the goal, at least not when you're first starting out. The most important thing is to communicate your message clearly and confidently. And sometimes that means letting go of the need to be grammatically perfect.
So it's more about fluency than accuracy.
In the beginning stages, yes. Of course, grammar is important, but don't let it paralyze you.
That's good to know. Now, for our listeners who are just starting out on their English-speaking journey, what specific advice do the sources have for them?
They have a whole section on that.
Mhm.
And the main message is to start small and have fun. Don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Okay, so what would be a good first step?
Just start with the basics. Repeat simple phrases and sentences out loud. Maybe even sing along to some English songs. The goal is to get comfortable with the sounds of the language and to train your mouth muscles to make those sounds.
So it's about building that foundation first.
Yes, exactly.
And then what? Like when you're ready to move beyond just repeating phrases, what should you do?
Try having some simple conversations, maybe with a friend who speaks English or with a language partner online. Just keep it simple. Greetings, introductions, basic questions. The sources even have some example sentences that you can use. It's all about taking those small steps and building your confidence.
I love that. Start small and build up from there. And I
Yeah.
think this ties in perfectly with another big challenge that a lot of English learners face, confidence.
Right.
We're so afraid of making mistakes or sounding stupid that we just don't speak at all.
Oh, I know that feeling. And the information you sent has some great advice on how to overcome that fear.
Okay, what's the secret?
Well, one thing they emphasize is positive self-talk. Instead of focusing on all the things you can't do yet, try to celebrate your progress. Remind yourself of how far you've come and focus on what you're good at.
So it's like being your own cheerleader.
Exactly. And it's not about being arrogant or unrealistic. It's about acknowledging your efforts and giving yourself credit for the work you're putting in.
I think that's such a powerful message. It's easy to get caught up in our own self-criticism, but it's so important to be kind to ourselves. And the sources also talk about setting realistic goals.
Yes. Instead of aiming for perfect fluency right away, break down your goal into smaller, more achievable steps. Like maybe this week, your goal is to have a 5-minute conversation with a language partner.
Mm.
Or maybe it's to order your coffee in English without getting flustered.
So it's like setting those milestones along the way.
Exactly. And every time you reach one of those milestones, celebrate it. Acknowledge your progress. It'll keep you motivated and help you build that confidence.
I like that. Sometimes we're so focused on the end goal that we forget to enjoy the journey. And remember, making mistakes is part of the process.
It's inevitable.
Right.
And instead of seeing them as failures, try to see them as learning opportunities. Every mistake you make teaches you something about the language. And the more mistakes you make, the better you'll get.
That's a really good point. Okay, so we've talked about thinking in English, practicing speaking, and building confidence. But there's one more crucial element that the sources highlight: listening.
Right.
Why is listening so important for speaking fluency?
Well, think about it. When you were a baby, you learned to speak your native language by listening to the people around you. You absorbed the sounds, the rhythms, the intonation, and it's the same with learning English. Listening is the foundation of speaking.
So the more we listen to English, the better we'll be able to speak it.
Exactly. When you listen to English, you're training your brain to recognize the sounds of the language and to understand how words and sentences are put together. And that makes it much easier to produce those sounds yourself when you're speaking.
And the sources also mention a technique called shadowing. What exactly is that?
So shadowing is basically listening to a piece of audio, like a podcast or a speech, and repeating what you hear almost immediately. It's like you're the speaker's shadow. And it's a really powerful way to improve your pronunciation, your rhythm, your intonation, and your overall fluency.
So it's like active listening on steroids.
Yeah, something like that. It really forces you to pay attention to the details of the language.
Okay. And the information also talks about the benefits of listening to real-life English dialogues. Why is that so important?
Well, because real-life conversations are different from the kind of English you might hear in textbooks or language learning apps.
Right.
In real life, people use slang, idioms, contractions. They speak at different speeds and with different accents.
So it's more natural and authentic.
Exactly. And by listening to those kinds of conversations, you'll get a better understanding of how English is actually spoken in the real world.
So it's about bridging that gap between textbook English and real-world English.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about training your brain to think in English, practicing speaking, building confidence, and the importance of listening. What are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that fluency is a journey, not a destination.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And it's about finding what works best for you. Some people might find that they learn best by listening to podcasts. Others might prefer to have conversations with native speakers. The important thing is to find a method that you enjoy and that fits into your lifestyle. And to be consistent. Remember, even a little bit of practice every day can make a big difference over time.
You've given us so much to think about and work with. And now it's time for you, our listeners, to take action. Now that you're armed with all these techniques and insights, what's one small step you can take today to start training your brain to think and speak in English more fluently? What's one simple action you can commit to? Think about it, write it down, and make it happen. And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.
Bye.